Okay. So now we're going to page. Now we're actually going to the front page, a new Mishnah, Mishnah 7, Pirkei Avos. So we go to the front of the booklet. We have the Mishnahs, and we're doing Mishnah 7. This is down to Simcha Bracha. See, if you all come one at a time, I'd know your names better. If you all come one shot, it takes me longer to figure it out. So this Mishnah is a statement by Nitai or Abeli. In the previous Mishnah, he said that there were two people, that they were the leaders of the community, they were the greatest authorities of Torah in their generation, Yoshua ben Prachya and Nitai Arbeli. So now this is a statement by one of them. Nitai Arbeli means from the city of Arbel. And he said the following, Harchek mishochen ra, distance yourself from a bad neighbor, Valtis chaber l'rasha, don't be a close friend to a wicked person. And the third statement is al tisyayish min haperonius, do not abandon belief when chas v'shalom things are happening that are not pleasant. It looks like a person is being punished. It shouldn't lead you to give up, but continue to trust and have belief in Hashem. So again, each one of these three is a world in its own right. We'll start with the first one and the second one, these two. The first one is stay far away from a bad neighbor. And the second one is don't become a close friend to a bad person. So now we'll go to page 9. So I prepared the sheets, but I guess I left them down. No, I didn't. They're here. Okay. So I have the sheets here. I mean, this is something from the Siddur, which you all know, but it's not, I'd like you to look at it while we go at it. I'll give you a break today. Sure now, if you don't mind. Thank you. It's your exercise day today. There are two things that this Mishnah talks about: the importance of a good neighbor and the importance of a good friend. So happens to be that this week's Parsha is actually a message, a lesson that relates to this subject. And that is, this week's Parsha talks about a city that had evil people living there, the city of Sodom. But there was someone who was actually a relative of Avraham Avinu, and he chose to move there and to live there. And as a result of that, he got caught up in their corruption and their negative activities because he chose to live with neighbors that are bad neighbors. So both things are emphasized. And what I'm showing you on this sheet is how important it is. Imagine every day, every morning when we daven to Hashem, one of the things that we're sort of asking and praying for is, Hashem, keep me away from a bad person and keep me away from a bad neighbor. We say it twice. The commentators on the Mishnah talk about the difference between a bad friend and a bad neighbor. In fact, there's going to be a Mishnah later in the second chapter of Pirkei Avos that there's a disagreement between two sages. One sage says the most important thing is to have good friends and not bad friends. And the other one says they're both important, but the most important thing is to have good neighbors, not bad neighbors. What is the difference? So they explain that the difference is in quality and quantity. In other words, when you're close to someone that is not a good influence, it affects you. And even though a person will say, I'm okay, I'm strong, nothing's going to affect me, You can say whatever you want from today till tomorrow, but the fact is that we are affected by our environment. We talked about this the other day. We are influenced by people that are around us, and that has a big impact on the way we feel about things. So therefore, we should surround ourselves with good people and good neighbors. The difference, though, between friends and neighbors are, a neighbor is someone that's close. You always see your neighbor, you're near your neighbor, but it's more of a geographic closeness, not really close as in a sense that you're close emotionally to each other. A friend is the opposite. A friend could be somebody that you're very connected to and you share a lot of things, but you don't necessarily find that they have to be physically in the same geographic location. It can be, especially today, it can be different ends of the world and it's a close friend. So this is a little bit of a difference between the two opinions. Which one has more of an impact? When you're close to somebody geographically and you're constantly around them and you constantly see their behavior and that has an impact on me? Or no, what counts more is when you're close to someone in a way of quality. It's a quality closeness that you're close as friends, and that has more of an impact on me. But no one doubts that both of these two things are important. So here are some quotes from the Torah that relate to this subject of having a good neighbor. Number 2 is a quote from Gemara, which reads like this on page 9: Oy l'rasha v'oy l'shchene, which means woe to the wicked and woe to their neighbor, which means a person that in their own right they would have been okay, but because they chose to live near, in close proximity to a person who was negative, it will have a negative effect on them. And by the way, of course, it also works in the positive, but the negative works quicker and more stronger than in the positive. It's an interesting halacha. I don't know if you ever had a chance to go into these halachas yet, but there's one section of halacha in Torah, which are the laws of purity and impurity. It was more relevant in the times when we had a Beis Hamikdash. That if a person touched a dead body, for example, or someone who had leprosy or some other condition, they become impure, and they weren't allowed to go into the Beis Hamikdash. They weren't allowed to eat any of the meat that was from the Beis Hamikdash and other things. So how does someone become impure? If they touch the dead body, they become impure. Even if you're in the same room, God forbid, there's a dead body, the person becomes impure. Does it also work in the positive? Oh, if you touch a tzaddik, boom, you become a tzaddik. So the negative somehow moves a little bit quicker and it's more effective. That we become affected by someone who is that way. One of the examples of this in the Chumash is there's going to be a parsha much later. Yes?
Oh, I was just going to ask, what if there's a dead person, like, God forbid, outside, and you're like kind of far from them, but you're still in the same?
No, only if you're under the same roof.
Okay.
And if it's outside, only if the person is touching, but otherwise not. There's a parsha in the Torah, it's called Korach. And that's about a person who led a revolution against Moshe Rabbeinu. They were in the desert, they saw the miracles, they went out of Egypt, and nevertheless, this person wasn't an ordinary person. He was actually related to Moshe Rabbeinu. He was a brilliant Torah scholar. He was also someone who had prophecy, and he was very wealthy, but he wanted a position of leadership and power, and he made a revolution against Moshe Rabbeinu. And we find that the people in his tribe, which was Levi, a lot of those people joined him. But who else joined him? Another tribe, and those were the people that lived next to his tribe, the neighbors. So the Talmud says, woe to the Rasha and woe to his neighbor, that by being a neighbor of a wicked person, you get sucked in, you get schlepped in to his negative activities. You might remember something similar to this from the Parsha of Noach. In the Parsha of Noach, it starts off saying he was a tzaddik in his generation. So perhaps the teachers spoke about this. What there are commentaries on this pasuk that says, what does it mean? That had he been in a different generation, he would have been a much greater tzaddik. But in this generation, because there's so many wicked people, he wasn't what he could have been with his full potential. So again, the same thing, when you're around people that are negative influence, this is how it affects us. So it's interesting to note that we have a Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch is called the Code of Jewish Law, which has all the practical laws we need to know how to live our life. And in Torah, even the order of things, the sequence is very significant. So the first page in the whole book of Code of Jewish Law, there are 4 volumes, there are hundreds of pages, there are thousands of halachas, but this is the first page. The first page, which means this is sort of the gateway to go into halacha, the gateway to live as a Jew. Strange enough, I mentioned it I think earlier, it starts off with learning from 3 animals. I'm going to be learning from an animal? Yes. Torah said we learn from 4 animals. One is a lion, one is a leopard, one is an eagle, and the other one is a deer. From there, we learn to be quick. From the lion, we learn to be strong. What do we learn from the leopard? The leopard, it says to be bold and have courage like a leopard. And what does it mean to have courage? The Hebrew term is what we have in number 3. Al yizbayish mipnei maligim. Don't be intimidated by people that laugh at you, the people that mock you, people make fun of you. Because after all, living as a Jew, you're doing things that are different than everybody else around you. Putting on tefillin on your head, wearing a talis, wearing tzitzis, a woman who's wearing tznius clothing in the middle of the summer, wearing a sheitel, all these things are different than the current. Everybody's going in a different direction. Everyone's going this way and I'm going that way. So we have to be as bold as leopard, not to allow it, which means even though the Torah says, choose good neighbors, but we can't use that as an excuse to say, you know why I did what I did? Because my neighbors were like that, I had no choice. That's not an answer. Hashem gives us the strength that even if we're surrounded by hundreds of neighbors that are not good influence, I am able to be the way I should be. But we don't look to make our test more bigger and stronger than it is already. That's the point. In other words, if I live in a neighborhood where there's nobody that keeps Shabbos, I can't say to Hashem, I'm sorry, Hashem. Everybody around you doesn't keep Shabbos. Everybody around you is not wearing tznius clothes. Nobody here in the neighborhood is wearing a kippah on their heads. I'm uncomfortable. I can't. That's not an answer. So why do we say you should choose to live in a good neighborhood? Because I have the power to overcome the test, but initially a person should not put himself in a situation which is challenging and testing. In fact, on this paper that you're looking at, again, if you say this every morning, and you also pay attention to the words that are coming out of your mouth, one of the prayers are here, Hashem, please protect me from not having any tests. Where is that? It's the first paragraph. May it be your will, Hashem, that to make us cleave to your commandments, do not bring us into sin, nor into transgression, or iniquity, nor into temptation or scorn, which basically, the first words in Hebrew, I don't know how they translate it here, into temptation. Temptation, the Hebrew word is nisayon, which means a test, any kind of test. We're asking Hashem, don't give me a test. Oh, and that's the number 4 on the sheet, out failing the nisayon. So again, I ask not to have a test. I really shouldn't put myself in a situation which is challenging and testing. But if I am there, I should know that I have the strength to be like a leopard and overcome it and not be affected by it. Number 5 is the opposite term, which says, Teiv l'tzadik, the Teiv l'shchenei, which means just like we say, woe to the wicked and woe to his neighbor, we say the opposite, how good it is for the righteous and how good it is for their neighbor. Again, is there anything in this parsha that you could think of, and of course you could if you'd only think a little bit harder, that clearly speaks so much about this subject, the power of a good neighbor. This parsha is the part, what?
Abraham like laughed after cities were destroyed and shot up.
That's that he wanted to be with bad, but where do we see the positive and the advantage and the benefit of a good neighbor?
Abraham was a good neighbor and he advocated people that deserve it, he advocated on their side.
Okay, you're almost there. What did he advocate? What was his argument?
If there is like a certain amount of righteous people that I guess are closer neighbors,
There you are.
then
What he said was, Hashem, if there are 10 neighbors in the city that are good, in that merit, let the whole city be saved. So we see that when you're living near a tzaddik, it has protection physically and of course spiritually. Yes.
I guess I just wanted to like bring these two together, like judging favorably helps you decide or like have good neighbors, because you can't even like maybe you shouldn't even come to think that you have bad neighbors in the first place if you're judging everyone favorably.
So the answer to that point, it's a very good point you're bringing up. I'm supposed to judge everybody favorably. Why am I choosing? This is a good neighbor, a bad neighbor, everybody's good. So remember, we spoke about this yesterday, that we also shouldn't be naive, which means like this. If someone does bad things, judging them favorably doesn't mean that I pretend that I don't know about it. No, that's not using common sense. I know about it, but I could still be judging them favorably, which means instead of hating them, instead of being angry at them, I feel compassion. I maybe will daven for them. Somebody recently told this story that
But I don't want to be close. Just
right.
finish.
In other words, I might not even be blaming them. It's not even their fault. Maybe they're a victim. Maybe they were. Maybe someone did something to them when they were younger, and that caused them to be. It's not their fault, but it doesn't change the fact that they are right now not in a good place, and I shouldn't be near them. So this person told the story that there was a principal in the school that had younger children, and there was a child that was not behaving, and he decided he's throwing him out of the school. We all know when you throw a child out of the school, it's devastating. Whether they show it or not, it's one of the things that really caused a lot of harm emotionally. Anyway, he wanted to be sure he's doing the right thing. Before he did it, he went to a great rabbi, asking his advice. So the rabbi said to him, what's his mother's name? So he says, I have no idea. Says, you don't know his mother's name? So that means you never even prayed for him, that he should improve, that he should become better. You never prayed for him to become better, and you're ready to throw him out? Like, what effort did you make to have him improve that you're ready to throw him out? It was a very powerful point. In other words, first you try everything you can to help. And why do you do that? Because you don't hate and you're not angry, because you're judging him favorably, that even though he did X, Y, and Z, it's maybe not his fault. It has to do with, like I said before, situation at home, situation with friends. Maybe he's being bullied, and we find this is really true today. It's one of the big things today. A child is being bullied, and he'd be screamed at for acting a certain way. Then we find out he's actually a victim. So you can judge favorably, but it still doesn't mean that this child might not be dangerous because of one reason or another. So therefore, these are two separate things. If someone is not in a good place, I shouldn't be their neighbor. And nevertheless, look at Avraham Avinu. He davened for them. Here's the perfect example, right? He was saying to Hashem, he knows how bad they are, but he davened for them, which means he was finding ways. He was looking for ways to judge them favorably, and they should be protected and safe. But no one doubted that they were not good influence. He didn't go live there because they're not good influence. Yeah.
Can you do that like with non-Jews? Like, can you daven for if you have a neighbor
Absolutely.
who's not a Jew?
Absolutely. Every person, Jew and non-Jew, inherently is good. And we see this all the time. We see beautiful things that people have done, Jew and non-Jew. And people are influenced a lot by their surroundings, by their friends. Sometimes children are, beaten by someone, they're molested by someone, all sorts of things that influence them. And when you take that away, they're beautiful people. And the same God that takes care of us takes care of every human being on the planet. I don't know the reason why, but I know that people would write to the Rebbe asking a bracha for friends that they knew that were not Jewish. And the Rebbe would say to write their father's name. I don't know the reason. But I once heard the reason, I just don't remember it, that when you're praying for a Jewish person, you pray the person's name and their mother's name, a non-Jew, the father's name. In fact, I remember here in school, there was a woman that her ex was not Jewish, but she still cared for him and he was sick. She asked me to write to the Rebbe, which I did. The Rebbe wrote back, what's his father's name? So the Rebbe prayed for Jews and non-Jews. The Rebbe gave out dollars to Jews and non-Jews. And we're supposed to actually be a light to the nations. Everything we can do to help everyone. Here's an interesting pasuk, number 6 on the list, when we talk about the difference between a neighbor and a friend. It says that a good neighbor that is close is better than a brother that is far. There's 2 ways to interpret that, literally and figuratively. In other words, if you have a good neighbor that's close, next door to you, and is good influence, it can have more of an impact on you than a brother which is very close to you but is far away. Or you can also interpret it in a figurative way, that a good neighbor that is close, even though it's only a neighbor, but it's better than a brother that's far and could have a negative influence. So this is just to bring out the point that there's closeness in terms of quality and there's closeness in terms of quantity. Someone that's always around me and that has an effect on me. So sometimes people bring up about religious Jews, they live in ghettos. I had this at times when we have the parents of the tone, some parents bring it up. Why do you people live in ghettos? Why is it a ghetto? All the religious people live together. So I said to them, if you would be living in a neighborhood and all the kids in the neighborhood are doing drugs, would you move out? Or you let your kid play with them? Of course I'd move out. So you go to a place where people don't do drugs. Why is that not like a ghetto? It makes perfect sense. If I want my child to live a certain way, I will move to a neighborhood with the people around me live in that way, and that supports me, that reinforces what I want. So Torah and mitzvah as part of my value system, I want to live with people of the same value system. That's all. It's very simple.
Community.
What?
Community.
Yeah, but that's what it is. You mentioned something about community. We'll have it a bit later, but it's interesting to point out that the truth of the matter is, like the question you asked, you're supposed to judge people favorably. So the truth of the matter is the Hebrew word for community is tzibur. Tzibur spells tzaddik, beis, vav, reish. This word means community. You find it in the Siddur in certain places. So there's a famous insight that what does tzibur, the community mean? Tzaddik stands for tzaddik, beis stands for beinani, and the reish stands for Russia. Whether it's a tzaddik or beinani or Russia, we're still all one community, we're one family. Okay, the next page, we don't have too much time, but we'll start. But that's the same Mishnah, the third part of the Mishnah, which talks about don't give up and abandon belief in divine retribution. What does that mean?
It means something bad happened, and you say, I don't do anything else.
Right, something happens to a person where they're, God forbid, suffering. And as a result of that, they lose their faith in Hashem. And they say, if God could do this, I want to have nothing to do with him. So the Mishnah says, don't be like that. don't give up. And of course, a person would need a lot of strengthening, a lot of understanding, like why is it happening? And also, how can I tell myself not to lose my faith? On the other hand, there are plenty of people that it's not much of a test for them. They would never even think of abandoning belief in Hashem. So there's another way of interpreting these words, and that is that sometimes when something goes wrong, especially if it happens a second time or a third time, you start having a very negative view of the future. Everything goes wrong, and every time something happens, you're worried and you have anxiety about the future. And one of the things that we learn in Torah is to have bitachon, trust in Hashem, that things will be happening in a positive way. Which means even if until now things didn't go the way I wanted them to go, if things were in a painful way, I could still have that bitachon. So I want to talk a little bit about the word bitachon because it's a big, there's a lot of details to this. But for this class, we'll just be brief, general idea. There are two words that are I would say, if people use them, interchangeable, but they're really different. One is emunah, which means belief, and the other one is bitachon, which means trust. So one means to believe in Hashem, one trust in Hashem. The difference is as follows, and there's a big difference. Belief means that I believe in God, and I believe that God could help me no matter what. He's not limited by the laws of nature, and he can help me no matter what my situation is. Bitachon means I trust and have confidence that he will help me. There's a big difference. If I need money, and I have an uncle that is a multi-billionaire, and he asks a question, do you think he could help you? Yeah, sure, he could help me. Are you sure he will help you? No, I'm not so sure he will help me. Who says he wants to give me money? So there's a difference between saying Hashem could help me or Hashem would help me. And that's the difference between emunah and bitachon, between faith and trust. Faith means that I believe that Hashem could, no matter what the doctor says, no matter what the lawyer says, no matter what the financial expert says, no matter how bad things look, I believe that Hashem is capable to turn things around. And even though the doctor says that this person can't recover, the doctor says this woman can't have children, or the doctor says that this illness could never be cured, I believe that Hashem could make things turn around. And as we've seen it happen many times. And that's belief. But how do we know that it's going to happen? So there's another part in Yiddishkeit which is called bitachon, and that is to have trust in Hashem, that he will help me, and that trust is something which is instrumental in making that bracha come to fruition. Here's a question? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, how do you get that trust? Like, it's easy to say, like, oh yeah, it'll happen, but like, how do you like really feel it with your whole like soul, you know?
Right. Would be nice to have trust pills. Take 2 doses a day, one in the morning, one at night before going to sleep. And the next day you wake up and you have trust. But like everything else, the way to get the heart is through the head. So we have to learn about trust, which we'll do a little bit in this class. This is the tip of the iceberg. There are places in Chassidus, there are books that talk about trust. And I guess the more I learn about it, the more I understand it, why should I trust? How can I trust? Eventually, from the brain, it goes to the heart, and I can start feeling that confidence. So we'll go more into it. So even though I need to explain a little bit, what is this trust based on? Because how can I be sure? How can I be sure that Hashem is really going to help me? And is that what it means? Some people interpret trust a little bit different than what I just said. But what I just said is based on the way it's explained by the Baal Shem Tov and Chassidus. And certainly our Rebbe speaks about this a lot. And this is the meaning of the famous quote, which many people have probably heard. It's on the sheet. It's number 4 on the sheet. It's Yiddish. And the words are, Trach gut, v'tzai gut. If you think positive, it'll be positive. Which means not only think positive so you'll feel good, think positive, and that will make things happen in a positive way. If you have trust in Hashem, that itself and that merit, things will happen in a positive way. How, what, when, and where, to be continued. In the meantime, I'd like to wish you a safe trip, an enjoyable trip. We'll see you back on Monday, Mirza Hashem. Good Shabbos.